childhood and how you became aware of your psychic skills.
Well, I suppose that I had a somewhat traumatic childhood, in keeping with the era that at the age of 5 the war was on and it was felt imprudent for the children to be evacuated out of London. Some were lucky, some were unlucky. I suppose to quickly sum up, I was unlucky. I didn't get a good billet. I arrived there with my young sister at 4 years of age, completely unaware of what was happening. And my sister, fortunately, got ill. It's an odd thing to say, but she got ill and she had to be taken away to hospital, and I didn't see her again until when I was 15 years of age. I didn't have a good childhood at all. And unfortunately, at the age of 7, I was sexually abused by one of the sons of the family. And so it wasn't particularly pleasant. But in some strange way, it was that which forced me back into myself. I had to look for an alternative. I had to look for something else. So I was lonely, but within that loneliness, I could create my own awareness of all that was around me. And I suppose, without knowing it, my psychic sense came to the front. Everybody has this, and everybody operates on it at some time. But for me, it was an escape from the reality in a strange way. Colin Wilson gives me the credit of being a typical outsider. And to be outside, you have to go inside. And so I hope that helps.
And what about the awareness of your skill or of your psychic powers?
It's extremely difficult to try to relate. It's only when I was forced to answer these questions many, many times. How did you become aware? I found loneliness comforting and yet frightening. I was frightened of the dark. I think the most important event in my childhood was that, in keeping with the times, I caught head lice. Nobody paid any attention to whether I washed or not. I wet the bed, and I suppose I stank of urine all the time. Baths and that were indifferent. And I caught head lice, and in those days they used to shave your head completely and then paint it with this gentian violet dye. And they gave me a form of helmet to put over my head. I remember going to school, and I'm sitting there, and the teacher came in, and, "What are you doing with that on your head? Take it off." "No, I'm not going to." "Take it off right now." "No, I'm not going to." And she just marched down to the class. She ripped it from my head. And of course, the whole school class, they started to laugh. "Ha ha, nitty, 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 got fleas." But all I could remember was the teacher's face of absolute horror. What she had done, she ran out. And strangely, for the first time, I began to experience a feeling, not for myself, but of how she was feeling, what she had done. She had exposed me, and yet that taught me so much. And as a result of that, we've kind of formed a relationship. She used to invite me to her home for tea, and she took me to chapel. She was a chapel goer. And we had religious instruction at school, etc., but I wasn't much of a believer, obviously, at that age. But for some unknown reason, by going to this chapel, they played emphasis upon Jesus. And as I write in the book, I became introduced to Jesus. At no time was he the Son of God. At no time was he anything to do with God. I reached out. He was there. I came back to my bed at night. I wasn't frightened. I had this link. And so within that I was developing without awareness of what was taking place.
What about the meeting with the medium Henrietta?
Henrietta Mulligan, yes. So this again was, I had come out of the Air Force and having been trained as an engineer, I was working for the Ministry, MOD, and one of the guys there, Mr. Mulligan, he seemed to be apart from everybody else and did his own thing. He sat with us when we had our lunch, but he wasn't part of the scene. And one day there was some form of discussion started taking place in the workshop, and he became the butt of their ridicule. I defended him and said, you know, why pick on the guy? What's he done to you? As a result of which, he kind of came towards me in a much more friendly way, and he invited me home to meet his wife, who was a spiritualist medium. I didn't know this, and I went back to see her, and she shook me by the hand and said to me, "You've got everything, and you must find it." And that then, at the age of 22, was the beginning of my, if you like, career. She pointed me into that direction. She said, "You have it. You don't need to be troubled. You have it." And so that was an important part of my life.